It's Wednesday, February 26th. Time is 1800. Call to order. Chief?
All right. Good evening. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at the minutes from the last meeting? I sent them out prior to the canceled meeting. I can forward them again if you like.
Okay.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the last
Motion to
meeting?
approve previously.
Second. In favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Minutes are approved. All right, three things tonight. The first item, old business A, is Chief's Goals and Annual Review by Deerfield Select Board. We can do this first, or we can rearrange the order. It's fine. What essentially this is part of my employment contract and part of what all of the department heads in the town of Deerfield do is a SMART goals kind of organizational chart to talk about what direction we want to take the department in over the next year. You have a copy of a very rough draft in front of you. It's the blue and white pages. And I am scheduled to meet with the town administrator, Chris, and Tim Hilchey tomorrow morning to go over some of the formatting and edit some of these things. So tonight I just wanted to be less concerned with that aspect of it, but take a look at the actual goals themselves. And these are things that I've come up with that are important, I think, not really for me personally, but as a direction to take the position in over the next year. What are the chief's goals for the department for the year? So, I think we can kind of buzz through this unless anybody has any real concerns or other thoughts. Which is the other reason I wanted to bring it to you, is if there's anything that's really important to any of you that is absent from this, we should have that discussion now. So workplace safety and quality being my primary goal. Underscoring every single thing we do is the safety of our employees and our patients. Nothing happens without some thought to that. So to really develop a true safety culture, and that is easier said than done. We find resistance to things in the most unusual and unlikely places sometimes, but it does happen. So I want to exceed any occupational safety standards, not just for the point of exceeding them, but I think some of the standards fall a little short and we can do better. Certainly there are some of the federal occupational safety standards that we could definitely improve upon. So what I'd like to do to that end is design and implement a vehicle preventative maintenance program. Currently it's a bit reactive and I think we can do better at that. I'd like to have an independent third-party safety audit for occupational safety. There's a number of people that do that at various price points. So it's something I'd like to investigate and move forward with so that it's formal. I would like to replace some of our personal protective equipment. I don't mean like masks and gloves. These will be things like ballistic protection, Tyvek suits, respirators, helmets, things like that, just so that these things are available to our employees. We could do some facility improvements. This is going to be things like chemical cabinet, MSDS, racks, things like that, just so that we're not only compliant, but it's useful to people. And then employee training that goes along with that. And that can be pretty interpretive, right? So with employee training, we can talk about anything from driver safety to emergency vehicle operator classes, to OSHA classes, or just awareness level things, to you name it, right? So I'm not saying we want to do all of these expensive things in the next year, but I would like to really get the ball rolling and make sure that moving forward, this is a really huge component of our operation.
So Chief, do you have a safety officer or a safety committee here?
We do not. Right? So that's a good point. We could talk about employee safety representation. And yeah, that could look different ways, definitely. Any other
Yeah,
thoughts?
sometimes the input is good.
Oh, 100%. Any other thoughts? Thoughts from the crowd? Goal number 2, we're looking at enterprise fund independence. And that's not my word, this came from Chris. But I would like to operate with as limited town funding as is possible. And what we're specifically referring to here is capital planning. With the most recent ambulance purchase, that ambulance is due to arrive spring of next year. It's a year away. We didn't have the money for it, and this is before my time, so I'm not sure what the process looked like, but the way I understand it is that each town was approached and each town agreed to give additional funding for the purchase of that vehicle. I would like to get to a place with our department where we can use some of our revenues for our service revenues to go towards capital planning so that we can replace equipment and vehicles without having to go ask for extra money. We already ask for a lot of money from the towns every year through the tax assessments, and this is just one more thing. So we have that money, and it's done different things over the years. You can look at the budget and see how it's been variable. When we talk about the budget after this, we can kind of talk about where we're going to be at to kickstart that. But that's something I would like to make as a big goal, is that we can actually plan ahead and save for the things that we need. Right?
That was our original goal.
It's a great goal.
That's why we were, at the time, we were putting 50,000 away into the retained earnings, because we felt at that time every 5 years you would be replacing, and the 50,000 would be 250,000, because at the time was what, and some people had to keep adding stuff to ambulances, so now they cost
Don't look at me, I'm not the one who makes them that expensive.
Yeah. So that was a goal, and then some of the retained earnings were starting to be used for budgetary write-ups. So yeah, actually that was a goal.
Good.
And
Well, I'd like
that's-
to make it a goal again, because we seem to have
Should
lost
be.
our way with it. We have used retained earnings to offset the assessments and decrease the town's contributions. And that can be a useful device, for sure. But I think, there's enough there that we can divide that and we can plan ahead for things that we know we need.
The primary use should be for capital planning.
Agreed. We can also look at other strategies. We've done pretty well with ALS intercepts and mutual aid responses. We've given away less than, I think it was 36 calls this fiscal year, and we're at the end of February. That's good. That's really good. And we've probably hit close to $40,000 in intercept revenue. So that plan is working. Doing those calls has helped pay for our system without loss to our system. So I just put that here as an example. It's not a hard and fast rule. I know that this topic can on occasion be challenged. But I'm completely open to any other strategies that anybody has for decreasing or for saving money, right?
One of the things Matt had talked about was the revenue with talk of Medicare reimbursements going down.
So I brought that up, yeah. So what he's referring to is there was an email exchange between Matt Russo and myself where he had asked about some of the line items on the proposed budget. And one of those was the anticipated ambulance receipts, service fee revenues, which I have as $800,000. That's what we had for the current fiscal year, and we are on target to reach that. We certainly exceeded that in the previous fiscal year. So I think it's a reasonable number, but it is not a conservative number. It's an educated number. So we certainly can flex that number around, and you bring up a good point. There is a lot of discussion right now at the federal level about funding for public programs like Medicaid. I'm not sure if they're avoiding discussion of Medicare, but 30% of Medicaid goes into Medicare.
Mm-hmm.
So any disruption in public payers is going to have an impact on not just us, but every ambulance agency, every hospital. So I don't know where that's going to go. I know that the budget that was passed by the U.S. House last night now moves on to the Senate. Certainly there will be changes made there, and it calls for a massive reduction. It's almost an elimination of Medicaid. They're not calling it that, but the amount of money they're talking about is the budgeted amount for Medicaid. So I don't know what that's going to look like. I can't anticipate it. There's uncertainty, and so the point that Matt and I were discussing was, how do we plan for this when we don't know what's going to happen? And I think it does make some sense to expect there may be a reduction in public payer reimbursements. That's not unreasonable, but I don't know how much.
I think that's a problem. Like you said, that is a problem.
It's a huge problem, right?
Because it's like saying you don't, when you, and again, most of the people a lot of times look at a budget on the expense side, but the revenue side is just as critical. Mm-hmm. And we can't really look at that revenue side.
So I think what I would like to do, and we can kind of talk about this when we go to the budget, is we can play around with that expected revenue number a little bit and decrease it. And that's going to decrease our retained earnings by the same amount. But ultimately,
So I guess you're going where I was hoping to go, and on goal is develop a plan for use of retained earnings, and like you're talking, but we should have a plan. I know in some of what we said, we looked at our free cash and our free cash and our stabilization and all of our accounts, and then we put things down. We will spend X amount on different things, so that when somebody said, well, how come you're spending this amount of money on educate or whatever, and there was a reason, because I'm afraid, and you started in your initial conversation is spot on. Our goal was that we were going to use retained earnings for capital expense. But what's happened is that we've started to use, because we've been concerned about the cost of the towns, we've been using retained earnings to offset the budget. So it would be nice to have a plan and say, okay, our goal is, and then that would be how we're looking at creating our, and that's more on our revenue side, and I think that's something that we should look at.
100%.
And you were going there.
All right, goal number 3 is I still really want to pursue department accreditation. This is a multi-year process. It's not something we're going to prepare for overnight and implement this fiscal year. It's going to take a few years to get here. This year, what I would like to do is really work to review policies and make sure that those policies are consistent with the accreditation requirements in a way that makes sense to our department. I would like to work with the town administration to meet any broader policy objectives that aren't specifically addressed in our department procedures, but rather our townwide policies that we fall under the umbrella of. I think when we look to the next fiscal year, we can look at other aspects of this, but the goal is I really think we can get there by fiscal year 20. On the management and human resources side of things, I really want to continue promoting just culture practices. And the big one that I would like to focus on this year is I would like to bring to the town's adoption of 111M benefits. What this is it would take us away from workers' compensation and put us into an injured on duty category, similar to police and fire. They have 111F benefits. 111M is a separate provision specific to EMS. And the benefits are the same. And I'm going to paraphrase heavily. The language is available, of course, but what it specifically says is that if you have an injury or are incapacitated as a result of your work, you do not lose pay. What that means is for the duration of time that they miss work, they continue to receive their paycheck. The way that different towns go about funding this for their police and fire departments varies substantially. And some of them have some pretty famous cases. If you ever want to have a bit of entertaining reading, there's plenty on the web. So I think the most prudent practice is going to be look at the adjustment, what would this cost as far as our insurance rates, and plan for that. And I think it makes sense to have a reserve fund to cover the gap. There's a famous case involving wetland mass pretty recently, where that well ran dry very quickly. And what are they going to do? There needs to be substantial reserve. And we can have discussion about that as its own topic. Benefit that I very strongly believe we should be offering our employees. The way
So is that in addition to workman's comp?
No, it
Or does it-
replaces it. Right, so they would not fall under workers' compensation anymore.
So you'd still pay into it though?
No, we wouldn't. We would pay into this instead. So, and what that looks like is a larger premium, not substantially larger, but larger, and then whatever savings we want to put aside to cover what isn't paid for under that premium. So it's money that we don't touch, it sits there. but it's for the benefit of our employees. So it's a pretty common benefit to have across the public service world, except for EMS. And the reason for that is most EMS is not municipal, it is not government run, unless it's the fire department, and they fall under those 111F provisions already, so they already get it, right? But if you look outside of the fire service, if you look to nonprofit, if you look to for-profit, those aren't even an option. But for us, it is. And it's very enticing. So that's something I would deeply like to go after for our employees. So that would involve training, it would involve establishing a fund and looking at what it's going to cost. It would involve going to town meeting, and it would involve having this law enacted, which it's currently not in our towns. So
It'd be interesting, 'cause I don't know if you have to do it in all 3 towns.
yeah, that's a great legal question. I don't know the answer. I mean, we're employees of the town of Deerfield,
That's what I'm thinking.
so theoretically, but I would want to run that by legal.
That's what I was thinking.
So that's another one. Looking to number 5 is clinical excellence, and that's pretty ambiguous, I realize, but that's on purpose. I want to obtain community EMS authorization through OEMS for a very limited set of goals. And in order to do that, we're going to need to complete a community EMS needs assessment. It's very different than like a community risk assessment. This is more looking at healthcare metrics and things like that. And seeing where can we actually find utility in this. Realizing that there's limited earning potential in doing so. However, if we are going to expand on community EMS and look at mobile integrated healthcare and things like that in the years to come, this is the starting point. It's a wonderful way to reach out and do more work within our community and engage the public and allow them to connect with our employees on a very personal level at very minimal cost. In some cases, it doesn't have to cost anything. So that's one goal. I really want to look at working with other leaders in town through business and other town departments. This could be something as simple as like last month I went and gave a chat at the senior center in Sunderland, and we had a wonderful discussion, and we talked about ambulance bills, and we talked about what's an EMT and what's a paramedic, and we talked about all of the process, and it was a really nice time, and I felt very welcomed there. It was a great discussion. It could be things as simple as that. It could be hosting community CPR classes at businesses. It could be you name it. So I really like the idea that we have that type of public engagement, and this is a way to do it that is quantifiable and measurable through official authorization. I also want to work with our medical director to improve the skill set and increase the level of care that we're able to provide for emergency ambulance operations. That's going to mean the potential for special project waiver or medical director option through the protocol. And I'm not saying any specific ones. These are discussions that Dr. Shapiro and we will all have, but I would like to make that a priority, right? If we distinguish ourselves as a premier provider in the area, and I think we already are to an extent, that's going to improve any other opportunities we have and help solidify this. So those are kind of the big ones. And I think I've covered on all the things. Keep us safe, keep us solvent, keep us progressive, medically, keep us engaged with the community, and plan for our future. So I don't know if anybody has any comments, criticisms, or suggestions for things I missed.
Not that you missed, but you're gonna have a major job next year with the budget if the Medicaid revenues decrease and you still wanna do capital, set aside for capital and set aside for
Yeah, well, I mean,
111M.
I hate to be reactive with money, but right now, we just don't
We
know.
don't.
And I've talked to a couple other department chiefs and what their plans are, and they're essentially doing what we're doing, which is moving forward as if nothing really big is gonna happen. And we don't know. I don't know how much of it is a show, and how much of it is real, right?
Yeah, it's really something's beyond our control, but it is moving relatively rapidly. A lot of things could derail it. And, Medicaid is, the largest beneficiaries of Medicaid are red states. And so at some point, maybe somebody in the Senate's gonna grow a conscience, and they're gonna say, this is not the right way to balance, to save money. But that's beyond our control. So we will have to review this and come back to it when we find out what the damage is.
So Medicaid, FFS non-managed and Medicaid managed care, end fiscal year '24 accounted for 9.8% of our earned revenues. So it's a good number.
Yeah, it's not insignificant here. I was just making the point that,
Oh, at a federal level,
Yeah.
for sure. And that's the thing, you can't run an operation without funding, right? So, that's, any other comments, about the goals, objectives, and strategies?
so, since we're gonna try and, the select board in Deerfield's gonna try and deal with this on March 5th. So what I'd request is that if anybody has thoughts after tonight, just send them along to Christopher Dunn. If you, we're gonna be talking about this again tomorrow, but at the end of that meeting, hopefully we'll disseminate this to Trevor and Blake so that we can approve it. And the reason why this is happening now rather than before is that, the previous town administrator had major health issues and things fell through the cracks. And it's not to say that, it's her fault, it's just, this happened. So now we need to pick up Christopher noticed this as soon as he became the interim and started pushing forward to get this developed. So, Deerfield's the one that dropped the ball on this, so we're gonna put it in place. So,
No, it's important, and it's important for the town, it's important for our operation, it's important for the individual. And so everybody knows, has a good idea where each other's stand. So if there's good points, they should be highlighted. If there's bad points, they should be addressed. And if there's stuff in the middle, then you see can work it better. So evaluations do not have to be a bad thing. It can be a very good thing. And I think you've said that in the past also.
oh, absolutely. I think that handled properly, they're the best thing for the morale of an organization.
Absolutely.
All I would ask is, if you pass this at your next meeting, just be sure to send it
Oh, yeah.
Send it along to the other.
The final version will be circulated through the
Right.
other towns, and Christopher's good at
Right.
following through on these things.
Right, just
Yeah, be
don't
sure.
count on me to.
No, it'll go to the town administrators of each of the towns, so that they can pass it down through the channel.
And then have some input at that point, of, final form.
So, this is why
Yeah,
it's a Deerfield thing, so you need to tell us in advance so that we can approve this. It's not, we're not gonna go back to it 2 months from now. So if you need another 2 weeks for us to do this, we can delay this to like March 17th or whatever.
Yeah, we don't have another meeting between now and your March 5th meeting.
Yeah, I meant
Yeah.
select board members.
Yeah.
You're a select board
Yeah.
member, so if you'd like, we can set a special meeting, or we can do a meeting at the beginning of April, and we will not approve this till then.
Yeah, I'd like to have a chance to run this by the rest of the select board and get their
Okay,
their
that's
input
fine.
before you. You know, this is the first
Well,
I'm
we're just-
seeing it, and
Absolutely. I understand.
If you make, if you get that on the agenda, just
Mhm.
make sure and forward it to me so I can be there.
Yep.
To answer
Yep.
any questions. No. Great. All right, moving on, to billing rates. At the last meeting, we discussed, it was voted on to do an across-the-board 5% rate increase to stay in line with other services statewide. And so I did that. These are the new ambulance billing rates. They have gone into effect as of February 1st, and here they are. There are a few things on here that might be a little misleading. The intercept fee and the paramedic intercept, as you see them here, are standard rates. However, those are superseded by any special agreements we have with other towns. And we have an agreement with pretty much every town around here, which is far lower than that. And that's reciprocated. So the going rate in Franklin County is anywhere from $275 to $375. And so this $920 paramedic intercept figure is unlikely to ever be utilized. That's a Comstar thing, not a Franklin County thing. So we don't do non-emergency calls, so those rates don't really apply to us. You'll see them here. So the BLS emergency base rate, ALS 1 and ALS 2, we don't do specialty care transport, and the mileage fee is of course applicable. So these are the new rates. I will go ahead and make sure those are available to anybody who's interested, and that's done. Moving on to the budget.
So Chief, right now, who we have, intercept agreements with, what communities?
Greenfield, Turners Falls, Conway, Hatfield. We have agreements with Coleraine. We have an agreement with Highland. We have an agreement with, I think I've signed 3 of these agreements in the last 6 months. The list keeps growing because we find ourselves being requested further and further out. Not as a routine matter, but because of unexpected things, right? And this happens. Where's the furthest you guys have gone this year?
Charlemont is the furthest intercept.
Is that Berkshire East?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Charlemont, North Far, Shelburne Falls, and Coleraine all pretty much. I think I technically did intercept far part of Leiden.
So, I mean, I've been talking with, or emailing back and forth with Dana about an intercept agreement over the last couple of weeks, and, you know, that'll likely be signed soon. And those bills can be retroactive, so. So yeah, the list keeps growing, and that's a good thing, right? We're not necessarily going out of our way to do these calls, but we are being requested to do them. And in the moment, the right answer is always yes. And we're compensated for them, so it's nice.
Thanks, Chief.
Yep. All right, to the budget. Does anybody need to stretch their legs or keep moving? So the big question on the budget, and you have it all in front of you. I'm just gonna scroll all the way down, and if you have any other specific line item questions, I'm happy to answer them. The big question that people had was revenue from service and retained earnings, which is right up here. So last year, medical service fees estimated was 800,000. I put the same number this year. The concern was that, is that accurate? If Medicare is affected, if Medicaid is substantially cut, what does that look like? And once again, we don't know. This is what I submitted based off of last year, and that was before there was discussion of big changes to federal payers. That left us with indirects, where did it go? These assessments, which offered a reduction over last year, it was a roughly, I think 6.8% decrease in the assessments from the previous fiscal year. So I'm pretty proud of that, despite the hit to certain line items. I think we can still, or it's 6.61, there it is. So this leaves us with about $190,000 left over. Not attached to a specific line item, not going into the assessment. I wanted to use that money to seed capital improvement. I could change this and say, okay, we're gonna get $750,000 estimated medical service fees. And that leaves us with $145,000 to seed capital improvement or utilize as appropriate, right? So we could do that, and that would leave the assessments the same. I think last year we asked for a very large increase in the assessment. And I think that was contentious, to be sure. I think we don't need to go up, despite some massive increases to the cost of our health insurance, anticipated energy expenses, step and COLA increases. I still think we can make it go down based off of our earnings and some operational cuts. Those cuts don't impact our service. What they do is we found a cheaper way to do some of the things we've already been doing. Certain things have gone up. Our insurance has gone up dramatically, and there's nothing we can do about that.
Not unless you want to self-insure. No one's getting in line to do that.
So any specific questions about the budget we can go over, and what are your thoughts on that? I mean, you know, in the end, right now, what we're left with is $190,000-ish to seed that capital fund. And that's pretty spiffy. We can reduce that amount, and I can put it into this to help out.
I think with the possible reductions in revenue, like maybe take 50 of that,
Yeah,
reduce the 800 expected
to 750.
to 750.
That's not unreasonable.
And you know, if the revenues come in, that's fine, but it'd be worse if they don't come in, and if we're budgeting for 8 and the 750 comes in.
Yeah. So, I mean, this isn't, I can't take credit for that tactic, that's all Brenda. So, you know, that's based off of her suggestion. So I have spent some time sitting with the town accountant, talking about this, and I think it's probably reasonable. Other thoughts?
I think that's why it's good, I think it's good to have a plan, how we're gonna use the money. That way, when you go back to the town, when you go back to town meeting, you can say, okay, the way, this is our plan for using the retained earnings. And this year, we're not gonna use it that way, and this is why. We're still gonna use the same amount, it's just gonna be, and I think you have a better I think people have, our residents have a better understanding of why certain things are doing. But it also keeps us on task also. It says, and sometimes if a particular, if a town or a couple of towns are having problems with making a budget, it says, oh yeah, we'll just take retained earnings, and it's like, okay, well, what is that doing? So I'd rather have, and again, the policy can be always changed, but at least if you have that policy, so Chief, you can start working on that.
So I think what we'll do is I can just adjust this $800,000 medical service fees to $750,000.
Yeah.
And the retained earnings can go to $150,000. And we just swap it, and then it's pretty even. The number for the assessments doesn't change at all. We're just changing line items, but in a way that's probably more conservative considering.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm just a
Potential
believer
changes.
in very conservative revenue estimates. And if they come in higher, then you're in good shape. But if you estimate too close and you come in low.
Well, if it comes in higher, the money goes to retained earnings.
Right, it goes back to retained earnings. But
Right.
if we're budgeting at 800 and revenues come in at 720.
Yeah, that's fiscally sound. I mean, and again, but again, we should, we went to 800,000 last year, knowing that, and we
Right.
did it for specific reasons.
Right, but now we've got this big unknown hanging over our heads in terms of federal
And
funding.
50,000 will be kicking the butt here, but that's okay.
Well, yeah.
It's a
I mean,
something.
Well, no, if you're talking about 9 or so percent
10%.
being Medicaid, I think that's a reasonable estimate.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, Tim?
No, I mean, that all makes perfect sense, and I keep asking, I understand that this new ambulance that we've ordered and is supposed to be delivered, the money is sitting somewhere. Where is that money?
You're investing in it.
Yeah, so much.
That money is there and is spoken for, and we don't touch it. That's what it's for.
No, I'm not. I'm basically saying, every time we go through budget season, I ask Brenda, where is the money? And I never get a full answer, but it's there. So.
Can we get a listing of the various accounts, like
Like
That-
Ed sent out.
what's retained earnings at, what are, this ambulance fund,
So,
and any other funds that there may be?
especially because he's not here, I don't want to throw him under the bus for this, but I think maybe we could add that as a regular part of the boo meetings, is that Blake, as the fiscal agent, does some type of presentation to show everybody where we're at. I look at it all the time. But, that's a big part of his role here. So.
Right, but if we're talking about taking for retained earnings, what is the gross number in retained earnings?
Yep, sure. So I will email you the account balances as of whenever I pull them up. It'll be tomorrow, and we'll get those up.
Yeah, if you can send those twice a year or something, even annually. just
Yeah, I
to-
think
to-
we had talked
We
about
could
quarterly
quarterly
board meetings,
meetings,
so
and have that be part of the
that
quarterly
makes
meeting.
a
Fine.
lot of sense. Anything else about the budget that we want to have discussion on? So I'm going to amend this, that retained earnings is going to decrease to $150,000. Medical service fees is going to decrease to $750,000. And if everybody's okay with that, this is the budget that I will bring to, I will send it to Sunderland. I've already met with Sunderland, but I don't anticipate any issue because the numbers don't change. And then this will be the budget that I bring forth to Deerfield and Whately in March to finance committees.
All right, so, you'll take a motion, accept a motion to accept the,
Move to accept the
Budget
budget
as-
as amended.
Second.
okay, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? I'll hear the discussion. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
402.
Does this form do the math for you? Because the total revenue was gonna drop to 940, 780.
It does, but my version's a little corrupted, so we're gonna do this on Brenda's computer.
Good.
Yeah.
It dropped to 997, I guess. It would take down 50,000, not 100.
Doesn't it go down 100 because you took 50 and 50?
No, it should kinda,
Yeah, they should balance each other out.
it should give you the same outcome.
Yeah, the service fee's coming down by 50, but the retained earnings going up by
Okay, so
50.
it's gonna stay the same?
Yeah,
One's a plus and one's a
yeah,
minus?
actually, yeah, it's just, it's all the same. The two numbers changing.
Right. Does anybody have any new business?
Chief, so, you've been here a year. I would say, success and sorrows.
Success and sorrows. You're looking for my successes and sorrows?
Oh, and it could be personal, it could be department, it could be,
Oh, I promise not to talk about my sorrow. So, honestly, the last year here has been a big learning experience, getting my feet wet with the way that this organization has run itself historically and the interaction and who the resources and people are in town, getting to know a different community and absolutely a different way of approaching EMS from what I am used to. It is a fundamental difference in how our job is approached from what I have known. So that has been the steepest learning for me, is just getting to know how is it done here and who are the players, right? How are things done? So I feel like got a much better grip on that, and that I'm able to have more useful conversations, and it's a different communication style with town government. It is different, and it's all good, all of it. That's been my learning curve. So I would say those have been the biggest challenges. As far as successes, I think we've seen some incremental successes here, but honestly, I would invite any of the employees who want to speak to that to talk about it, because they could probably talk about change that they have seen versus what I think I've done a good job at. So if anybody has any commentary, please speak up. If not, that's fine too. I don't want to put anybody on the spot, so.
No, it's the same number.
I think we've been able to
That's 250, no, 150.
make some policy changes that are equitable. I think we've been able to make some adjustments in equipment.
What's left?
We've changed the schedule and the schedule process. We've changed how overtime is awarded. to be consistent with
What's your
Oversight,
understanding is?
which is a pretty big one. We've done a lot of catching up, but mostly it's been about planning.
Yeah.
Well, again, to me, it's, sometimes you're always busy taking care of today's fires and tomorrow's fires that you don't have an opportunity to look back.
Mm.
And sometimes, and so I think it's important to look back, just as important to look forward, so that you gain, so that you're able to move forward. Something that you wanna do, are there things that you'd wanna do different? And I'm sure there are, because you're new in a job. But you have to recognize what those are before you can do them. So, again, I just hope, you take the time to look back, and always look forward, but look back and see if there was things that you would do differently and how you do them.
Mhm.
And we all, I try to do that every day, so. I just, for me, it's just what I have to do, but, and, I know, it's for me, to see where South County is today versus 16 years ago, when Gary Stone was standing up screaming about something. But he screamed very nicely. And I'll never forget the resident from Whiteley that told me that, I said, if you were having a heart attack, if I have a heart attack, I want a Whiteley EMT giving me CPR. And I go, man, that Gary Stone is a really good salesman. So, but we've learned a lot, and I'm not saying that we're right. I don't know if we ever thought we'd make it 15 years, so we did something right during those 15 years.
Right.
And I know the people today, they want South County EMT paramedics working on them before anybody else, so. Well, that's good, so we went from Whiteley to South County, so. And it's spoken highly of the service, it's spoken highly in the town, and that's important, and we don't wanna lose that respect that's out there.
All right,
Okay.
anything else for new business?
All set, Timmy? You got anything?
Sounds good.
All right, when do we want to meet next? We can look at, we had looked at quarterly, it's February. Do you want to, what do we have coming up? So we have FinCom in March, and you'll all be aware of that.
Town meeting start in April.
Town meeting start in April. It's probably,
Ours is April 29th.
That late?
Hey, we've been in June recently, so
That's
this is
pretty
early.
so it might be prudent to meet before the next town meeting.
So you still have to meet with Deerfield and,
Whately, FinCom, yeah.
so we should, just in case either town throw something in.
So, for next, so FinCom, I have Deerfield is 3rd, and Whately is the 18th. So do we want to look at the 20th or the 27th
Oh, March?
of March?
I'll be gone the 27th, I'll be St. Louis. 20th to 27th, I'm away.
April 3rd.
April 3rd?
Yeah, put that down. You okay?
I will.
Now, and if we don't have anything come up, is that a cancelable meeting?
It is.
Is that okay? Jimmy?
Oh, I'm always glad to cancel the meeting. Yeah,
Yeah, that should be between FinComs and town meetings.
Yeah, and Chief can tell us if there's gonna be a concern.
Okay, so I just sent that out to each of you. And.
So we should look at one in June? Have a,
You're planning ahead now, I like this. I don't know what I'm doing in June, Tom. Let's see.
the only thing in June, would we need
June is
one?
open.
Well, would we need one in June in case? Are we looking at any problems with budgets in the 3 towns that you know of?
well, everybody's budget's gonna be worse than they'd like it to be, but.
Right, yeah.
I think we're,
Our budget issues are in education, mostly.
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, education this year is hitting Deerfield less than it's hitting other towns, except Conway, which is getting a good reduction, so. Yeah, our budget is gonna be decided long before June, so I don't know who else has pulled.
Right,
Yeah.
then if we don't need one in June, then we'll hold off.
Well, I think the only thing that we may have to consider is to see if there's any federal impact
Right,
from Medicaid. And
Well, I think we could, you know,
if there's anything we have to do to,
need be, I
deal
think
with
we
it.
could always look at, you know, getting together emergently, right?
Right.
If there are big changes,
Yeah,
we
that's
can
fine.
always schedule
Yeah.
something. So we have the next meeting scheduled, we can leave it open after that.
Yep.
Okay.
And we'll take it from there.
And if you're having if there's no issues with budgets, then we can cancel that.
Great.
Okay?
All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
All right.
Have a great night, everybody. 6:56.
So.